All right, we are live. It is Wednesday, August 18th. It's another beautiful day in Austin, Texas, and across the US. Nice weather, looking to maybe come down on the raining side. We have amazing rain the last 2 or 3 days. In some places, we had 5 inches of rain. It's when it rains, it pours in Texas. All the lakes are up. And boating is going to be a big deal this weekend. So great to be with you all. We have a great guest today. But before we get rolling here, let me talk to John Butler. John, you got some music for us? Get us in the mood?
I do. Photographs and memories, Christmas cards you sent to me, all that I have are these to remember you. How you doing, sir?
Very nice, John. I hope you're doing great today.
I'm doing fine. Again, the uncertainty. We were due to have all of the.
John, are you paying the ASCAP fee on your songs?
No, I don't. They pay me to sing them.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
No, okay.
Linda, my wife, used to have a job listening to these for ASCAP to see who was cheating.
Oh, okay. Well, if you're not trying, if you're not cheating, you're not trying, as we say in the great state of Louisiana. But anyway, we're doing fine. Austin is fine. There's a lot of, we're going to stop and we're going to start. We're going to wear masks. We're not going to wear masks. Lots of debate about the mask. Lots of debate about the impact of the vaccine, about the booster. So
Yeah,
it's still pretty wild, Andres.
Yeah. We just made, actually, and you were part of that last night, we made a vote on the Digital 360 Summit, and we are enforcing requirement of masks for all those attending. For those who are on stage, away from the crowd speaking, they will need to wear a mask, and the panels will be highly, distanced, and also in the audience. And so, but we want everybody to wear a mask when not on stage. So hopefully that will help out in addition to everything else. But Llewelyn, how are you, sir?
Very well, thank you, except for the after effects of getting my third shot, which was knocked us out a bit, particularly Linda. She's been quite knocked out, but so was I. We had a rough night with it.
And if you don't mind me asking, Llewelyn, were those the Moderna or Pfizer shots?
Moderna.
Yeah. So I understand that the Moderna is sort of the most powerful one of all the vaccines.
Well, I was knocked out by the second one, not the first, and again by the third, but in a different kind of way. A lot of pain at the site, which I didn't get the first time. So,
right.
But I was encouraged to get the third shot because our mutual friend, Morgan O'Brien, got COVID after he had 2 shots.
Oh, wow.
I had dinner with him and Bell in Washington on Sunday, and they said, although they didn't have to be hospitalized, it was pretty awful.
Wow.
It was less than it would have been if they had not been vaccinated, but it wasn't a free ride by any means.
Got it. Yeah. Well, let me go say hi to Troy Blaschka. How are you, sir?
Doing very well.
Well, we're glad that you're here with us today, and looking forward to our conversation. For those of you that don't know you, let me give you a little bio. Troy Blaschka is the Director of Connected Solutions at Ubicquia, and he's with us, and we have been we're excited about Ubicquia and their product lines and their participation in the Digital 360 Summit and so on. Before Troy joined Ubicquia, he held several titles in the sales business development organizations at Altiostar Networks, at Cisco, at Alcatel-Lucent, at RapidLink, and Tektronix, to name a few. And I think that we need to thank him for his service as he started his career with the U.S. Navy and became a cryptologic technician. Troy has a BS in business management from the University of Phoenix. Thank you for being with us, Troy.
Oh, thanks for inviting me to come out and talk with everybody today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, gentlemen, COVID is an interesting place. Variants and so on. I've been listening to a lot of the jokes. There's something called the silent variant and the video variant, in the jokes, memes and things like that. Very funny. And God knows where this is all going to go. Clearly, it's going to stick around like the flu, and we'll have to take booster shots as time goes on, like Llewelyn just took. Seems like, there's a bit of an uptick in general, and nothing dramatic, but, got to be careful, got to watch out, got to take all the precautions possible. The economy seems to be, hesitating a little bit about, are we opening full throttle or not? And what does that mean? And so on and so on. Price of crude oil had kind of come down quite a bit, another $1.66. Price of gas has come down a little bit, 13 cents. The jobs creation in July was almost 1 million new jobs. So things are moving in the right direction, but COVID continues to have a gray cloud above everything. And so what's your take, Johnny? Where are we at?
Well, on the business side, I think that I'll just start with this. We have so many people moving to Austin, and we're asking what's the impact of the movement and the virus, and it seemed to be none at all. On that economy, the price of housing way up, hiring practices in Austin are way up. And as we've talked so much before on the program, is the uncertainty that is really interesting. And of course, as we've said so many times, there will be companies that will come back, and then there will be companies that will be created. So it's an interesting, in my intersection of wealth creation and job creation through business startups, the uptick is just absolutely tremendous. So all these things are dynamic, and they've always happened, but they're happening now at a very interesting time. So I just went I have lunch tomorrow, for example, for a friend who just sold a company for $750 million. And we always celebrate that in Austin, Texas. And, you sit there and you're celebrating on the one hand, and on the other hand, you're looking at the fact that our governor of the great state of Texas now has the virus, has COVID. And he's taken all the kind of precautions to take the medication that was given to Trump, the past president. So all of these things are in the news. And then, of course, we have what's happening in Afghanistan. And, I'm old decorated Vietnam veteran. And so I'm going through that twice. So you look at all the things that's happening. If it comes to the economy, what do you say? The stock market was down a little bit, but it's up again. It's almost like being in Vietnam and the entire world around you is still happening. You would think that it would have an impact, but so the COVID to me is like being in Vietnam, flying around in helicopters as I did, right? But the world is still going. So you come back to the world and it's going on. So you look at one place, right? You look at one place in America and it's really suffering. We look internationally, we've got to get our people out of there. We look locally, we have the virus. So it's very interesting. And the business side, one thing about America, we will always continue to strive in the business world, and we will adjust.
Right.
Well,
where are we at?
That's very optimistic, Johnny. I see it all much more confused than that. Afghanistan is going to have a big impact. It has been not well handled. Getting out is always hard to do. The end of empire is always much worse than the beginning. It's easy to invade. It's hard to extricate. The British learned that. The French learned that. Even the Romans learned that. And certainly we learned it in Vietnam, and almost exactly we repeated some of the mistakes. We even have the pictures coming from the airport. Can you imagine the pressure, the absolute despair of a young man who would try to ride on the outside
Oops.
of a jet airplane. It's not a good thing. It's going to be something that's very hard for Joe Biden to overcome. It's going to be the big stain on his presidency. And I think the problem is not that we couldn't get out, but that somehow our intelligence seems totally to have failed. It is hard. I've known 4 CIA directors, and 2 of them really quite well. And I'm just astounded to see this tremendous failure. I have to believe that the CIA and the other agencies gave the correct information to the government, to the president, and he chose to ignore it. During the invasion of the Second War, when we were looking for weapons of mass destruction, the CIA told me, I knew a friend there who was very high up on the technical side, we can't find them. But that was not what happened with the government. And so, of course, we had another invasion. It's a big black mark. It's going to destabilize the area quite considerably. It's a gift to Beijing, a gift to Islamabad, probably a gift to Tehran. They're all hoping to divide up and get their say. Harder for Tehran because they're mostly Shia and the Afghans are mostly Sunni. But there's been so much across border, and that border between Pakistan and Afghanistan is a colonial fiction. It was drawn by the Brits. And in fact, people lived on both sides of it. Pashtuns lived on both sides of it. We haven't heard the end of this. And what we have done in abandoning people who worked with us, our allies, and particularly women in that part of the world, is a considerable blot on our character and hell for them. After the first Gulf War, I was able to get a girl who worked as she worked as a translator, and she was going to be sent somewhere she had never lived. Her sister was in prison, because if you did translating, you were seen by the Kuwaitis as collaborating with the enemy. I'm sure the same thing is going to be true in Afghanistan. Domestically, things are much as Johnny said, except I'm deeply curious about the employment situation. We've added about 1 million jobs, and yet we still have a lot of vacancies and a lot of unemployed, and the two are not meshing. When I was coming back from Washington this week on the Acela train, there were many big established companies like Northrop Grumman advertising for help. I go down the street, as I did just before we went on the air, here where I live, people advertising for help. So there's something strange going on.
Yeah.
People either don't want to work, or they don't want to work in the kinds of jobs they have had heretofore. It deserves some study and some understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. Good points. Troy, you work for Ubicquia. You guys are flying all over. Tell us, if anything, lessons learned from COVID, and can you give us an insight into the last 12 months and where things are looking like?
Yeah, if we touch on the COVID topic first, I guess I like to say that I kind of paraphrase C.S. Lewis, right? We all live in a time, no matter when we grow up, there's always something going on, and it's really not the worst or the end of the world, right? So we're going to get past it, and we're going to keep marching forward, but we need to live our lives. So with that, with COVID, people have changed in how they live their lives. And some of that is really processing itself into, people doing school from home. And that's really what's driven a lot of this federal dollars, whether it's CARES funding, money that's coming in the new infrastructure bill to help people build out broadband, whether it's rural broadband, just, underprivileged, impoverished areas that need the services in there that is going to enable kids to do learning from home. So, and that's where our company really sees a good fit for us, because we have platforms that can enable learn from home situations at pretty much a better cost structure from deployment, easier, faster than traditional solutions. And we've done all of that through just innovative design.
Mm-hmm. Very
And
well.
could I ask Troy, how do you deal with the lack of natural person-to-person creative communication that you have when people go to work or go to school, which you don't have when they're working at home?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. You know, it's a different environment, whether it's, you know, a podcast like this versus something that we could be doing in person. You know, I think that there is an impact you're probably seeing with kids that aren't actually in schools. The state that I live in, state of Alabama, you know, we're doing in-person schooling. And I think that you're going to see that people are going to have to do that to keep from having a breakdown with children.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think also, let me just add to what Llewelyn said earlier. Llewelyn, you know, these decisions, as an old military boy myself, I think at the presidential level, they've got to be continuous. I'm sure that all of the living presidents talk to each other about what's going on. So we don't want to see the decision as a by one president. I think it was continuous. And I think the other thing that you alluded to is how can we predict? That is, if we had the kind of assets, for example, that Troy would bring to the table all over the world, if we were able to create smart cities all over the world and smart deserts all over the world, then we can have a better data to predict what's going on. And I think what happened there is it would happen, like you said, in any kind of military situation. I think right now it's certainly a lost cause. I think people will not get out of there, and I think it's horrendous for them to, you know, to be there. But I think it's part of pulling out, and in an Afghan, I mean, they should be able to protect themselves, but they could not protect themselves. So I think I agree with you that is a great American tragedy. But on the other hand, it is also the business of helping out and trying to get people to get on their feet themselves. The other thing about the economy I just want to add is that as we add jobs, and as you know better than me, it's going to be in all kind of different kinds of sectors. And the evolving sector, the business models, and I'm going to use Troy, your company, when I give the keynote speech at Digital 3 Summit, is, you know, how can we create all of the business models from smart cities? What does that mean for job creation in the future? And look into the future. We must always look to the future, you know, in America, to create jobs through new kinds of technologies.
Yeah. So Troy, as you know, we track here digital transformations, and we talk to all kinds of executives from multiple companies of all kinds. And one of the key areas that we focus on is obviously telecom and the new 5G. And we talk about smart buildings and smart cities and smart energy at large. And so you guys kind of dabble into all these areas in many ways. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts, let's say, on the telecom front? You know, lots of stuff going on for a while now, several years, on Internet of Things, on all kinds of latency, new technologies, you know, LoRa, you know, Sigfox, you know, YZUN coming up, and Wirepass, and all kinds of new technologies to connect anything, you know, track cattle, track vegetables, track anything that moves, kind of thing. And then on the high end, we got, you know, clearly, you know, 4G all over the world. Everybody's using it finally. And now 5G entering the early days, and 6G being designed. What's your take on being a telecom expert on where this is going and the impact to digitalization, to helping increase productivity, create jobs, make cities smarter? Where is that all going, in your opinion?
So I think maybe one of the good items to add there is that, you know, cities can't be smart unless they're connected, right? So everything really starts with connectivity. And that connectivity can be something like private LTE with CBRS. It could be a carrier brand services from a large tier 1 or tier 2 operator that has coverage with their purchased licensed spectrum. Or it can even go into the Wi-Fi area. We're seeing a lot of stuff about Wi-Fi 6 right now. And we're really building products across that spectrum to enable, whether it be a city to turn on private LTE or a Wi-Fi 6 system to get that coverage and or capacity into the users that need that. And we're also doing that with utilities, right? So that's a big thing with utilities now. We're trying to figure out how they pivot and go more into an LTE space because it's really more standards based. So I think you're going to see a lot of pivoting happening maybe towards LTE. I know you mentioned a lot of other technologies and standards there, but LTE really seems to be the dominant lion's share of standardization models, things that people can deploy, get the economies of scale, and really start to deploy those things in a standard fashion, no matter the use case. And that's really where we're focused on with building our product set, is to address that.
Yeah. What if I were to share your favorite slide here for folks to look at?
Sure, my product.
And you can walk us through some of your company offering. So if you can see my screen now as we're recording, go ahead and walk us around the world there.
Yeah. So we really kind of have basically three sets of divisions. We've got connectivity, we have smart grid, and smart city. So everything really starts with our light control system on the right hand side. It's a very small Dixie cup shaped platform that leverages the photocell socket on top of a street light. And we leverage this platform to begin doing light control, advanced lighting control for cities or utilities that own the light infrastructure. So this is really a platform that goes into really everything else that we build. So the native platform has power metering. So you're going to start seeing ANSI 136 standards coming out that are going to start to support advanced power metering for smart city solutions. And that's going to allow operators, utilities and so on to start to get into metered lighting versus just having to say, I'll give you a bulk rate for your light infrastructure. So where we start to see day burners, people start losing on that, where you're having energy just consumed all day. We can notify if you have a light that's just constantly burning. This platform also offers tilt and vibration. So I always like to say, if a pole was struck in the middle of the night, was it really struck? So yes, it was, and it may be compromised. We can send notifications to a command and control center to the technicians that say some event happened here. You should go look at that.
Right.
And all of this connects up over LTE. And that's really the basis of what we're doing. This same infrastructure that I just described resides in our small cell platform. So this is a standards-based LTE 5G small cell that would enable services onto any carrier's infrastructure across different service bands. Moving to the left, we have our air quality monitoring system. So the air quality monitoring system, it connects into our light control system, and all of that is backhauled over an LTE connection for command and control. This becomes really important when we start to talk about things that are happening. If we look at the West right now, I'm trying to do a trip to Montana and I'm scared that I'm going to be hiking in smoke because, half of the West is on fire. Our air quality monitoring system can monitor and manage and notify where you have fires popping up in real time. And this can be deployed, down those fire lines, down tree lines where you have utility infrastructure, and then just backhaul that all over an LTE connection. So we are looking at that lowest level of a 1.0 to detect smoke. Our platform next below that we call it the UB Hub. This is our Wi-Fi and an AI system. They're really two different models here. We're super excited about this platform because it does go to address the deployment of Wi-Fi services into, solving that digital divide. And the key metric, the key point of these units, the Wi-Fi and the small cells, just looking at them, they look different than pretty much everything else in the market that are typically just square boxes or rectangle boxes that mount on a pole. These all leverage the streetlight infrastructure. So we have, in the US, about 68 million streetlights. These are compatible with those streetlights. They simply plug into the top socket, the NEMA socket on top of a streetlight, and it allows you to deploy these units essentially in minutes. And that's really one of the main items that we've tried to solve through industrial design is how do you solve, where do you put it, how do you power it, how do you lower the cost for people to deploy these units in mass scale And that's what we think we've done through very innovative design.
Yeah, that's a fascinating. Any questions, guys, on this amazing product line?
Yeah, Troy, what I see some great business models. As a matter of fact, when the kids get a hold of this, there'll be lots of business models. I think you're going to have a lot of unintended business models. We won't call them unintended consequences. And I think that, the great concentration on the technology is absolutely wonderful. Concentration on the business model is, of course, what people would do and how it would affect the consumers themselves. And everything from the tilt vibration, everything of any kind of notification, there's a gaming possibility, there's a betting possibility, there's all kind of possibilities that the kids will take and really use the smart city to create with other kind of business models. For the first time in the history, and my emphasis, Troy, is that the whole city is now on the platform.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Troy, when we discuss how are they being received by cities? Are you getting good penetration?
So we're just starting to ship now, but we have lots of contracts with cities that are very interested in this. On the Wi-Fi front, we are working on the small cell front with currently one US carrier. We're in discussions with another carrier in Canada today. But the interest is very large. We solve one of the main problems when it comes to whether it be Wi-Fi or small cells is that a lot of that stuff's ugly. You see it, it's on the vertical structure of the pole. And we really address that by hiding it on top of a street light that is 30 feet in the air and a general user doesn't see. Or, I think John can relate to this, in Texas, it's not something you can shoot at. So, it's not something, it's kind of up and hidden. And the other items that were on the screen that we didn't really talk about, John brought it up, the tilt vibration monitor, a TVM platform, really interesting platform, an item that can really deploy on anything from utility poles running down a tree line so that, if a tree falls on that, we can tell what's happening and you can dispatch a technician, 10 miles in versus having to have them drive completely the whole line looking for something. But from a traction perspective, Llewelyn, the grid monitoring system, our DTM, it's called DTM Plus, Distribution Transformer Monitor, lots and lots of traction there. We're working with a lot of large utilities on that platform because it's really going to give them real-time information about what's happening on that transformer. And then through our analytics, we can start to be predictive about transformer failures or finding out where there are outages in the network and actually dispatch technicians prior to having to wait for a customer call in.
Yeah.
And you use for that LTE, and is it a private network or is it a public network?
It's actually either or. We can run our platforms today on a commercial network, or we can change from a software code and run them on a private Anterix network running at 900.
One of the last question, and that is, cities are having a huge problem with garbage waste, and they are hoping somehow that smart cities will at least provide waste management, if not reducing the volume of waste, which is a tremendous problem for every city. As you know, we've had garbage barges, we've had New York, which seems to have a particular problem sending it down to Virginia to the James River. How can we look to a smart city to see an improvement in the management of garbage?
Yeah. No, great question. I'll say two different aspects of that. So there are sensors out there today that can detect trash can levels, and we can actually connect those into our systems that sit up on the streetlight. So we can connect those via Wi-Fi type of connection and then transmit that data. So we become the network for the city for all of these sensors that they choose to run. So it's one quick, easy use case. But separately, one that maybe not exactly in line with the question, but we're working with a city in Louisiana today that has a trash dumping problem. They are getting frustrated with people just dropping off trash, bags and bags of trash in empty parking lots. And through our Hub AI, our artificial intelligence platform, we can train that AI model to notify the police immediately when someone is in that parking lot with a box or a container of a certain size, not kids playing on bikes, playing basketball or whatever it may be, but when we actually identify someone with something that looks like a trash bag, a box of garbage, getting out of their vehicle, their car, their truck, and throwing it, we can send that notification immediately to local police and authorities, and they can dispatch and capture those people in real time, where today, any video system that they're seeing on the market, they're essentially just seeing the person and have to go track them down. They want to catch them in the act. And that's how we're really helping address some of those issues.
Yeah, see, Troy, I'm dipping into my speech a little bit here. One of the biggest advantages will be underwriting. Okay, I want to take you through a case study here of a typical insurance company. And I was a management consultant for a huge insurance company here in America for 18 years. Can you imagine being able to predict everything that might happen on the street that would influence the flow of automobiles? Can you imagine predicting where accidents are more likely to happen in real time? So what happens is the data and the underwriting would be tremendous all over America. And I'm predicting it will be one of the largest business enterprises created in terms of data gathering. So why do we gather data? We gather data to underwrite. And when we underwrite, we try to predict the future. And when we try to predict the future, we like to be able to keep the promise. So one of the great things I think about the business model of smart cities is not only the connectivity, but the impact of connectivity on how we look at the future and what business enterprises can predict in the future. Everything from the delivery of groceries, everything from I'm going to the grocery store and an understanding that the tomatoes might not be as ripe as they are. All of these things are unintended business models, and they will flow like water and wealth in the future.
Yeah, the AI, so our AI, our artificial intelligence platform, I mean, really just a lead into some of the great things that we are actually doing today with that. You know, so we are doing things like car counting, you know, to start identifying, you know, are the roads engineered right for the amount of volume of traffic that's on them. We have the ability to detect near miss. So if we're seeing large volumes of near miss in certain crosswalks, are people actually in the crosswalk? We can tell you if they're actually in the crosswalk or if they're straying and cutting the corner to get through the crosswalks. All of this information we can get in real time. It's all stored locally on the system, so you're not getting a large, you know, transport bill for LTE. And this is the exact use case that we have with the city today that we're putting out up in New York. 475 of these specifically at intersections for intersection management, you know, crash detection and so on. So it's a very interesting point that you brought out, because it's exactly where we are focusing today.
And good. Yeah. Remember, Llewelyn, you just take the air traffic controller. Llewelyn is a pilot. And think about all of the information that we have now that we didn't used to have when you were a young man flying an airplane. Think about all the sensors that we have that will alert you to possible danger. And then transpose that to how we think about cities, how we make cities safer, how we make the movement of people in cities safer. And just as sure, Andreas, as we can have the load and move the load on the electric grid, we'll be able to do the same thing when it comes to the movement of people, where people shop, how they go to school. And it's all data for managers, parents, and that is the value of your great company.
Yeah, absolutely.
No hesitation about the data-filled world and the data-driven world, but he does seem to be very antiseptic. It does seem as though some of the humanity of a city might be eroded. And of course, there's the issue of privacy. And if you can be seen wherever you are, with or without facial identification, anything looking like privacy is a lost cause.
Yeah,
I think that I would say, Llewelyn, that, you know, that's a journey. I mean, AI itself is a challenge on how it's going to, you know, sort of provide all kinds of benefits, but in order to provide those benefits, it's going to need to know exactly everything about us, right? And so
People
But that-
need to be able to get out of the system. You mentioned flying, but if we were at the wrong altitude or something, we turn the transponder off so that air traffic control didn't know if it was, safe to.
Naughty,
Did it all the
naughty,
time.
naughty boy, naughty boy. Let me
No,
just say this.
there's not a pilot flying who hasn't done it for some reason.
Let me just say this.
And, sometimes you just don't want every movement of your person recorded and observed.
we
Unless-
agree. We agree.
Unless you commit a crime. And then I want to
mean,
be able to find you if you commit a crime. So as long
Well,
as you
sometimes you find yourself in a position where I had it once done in South Carolina, where you're somewhere and nobody knows where you are, and there's a sort of luxury about it. Check into a hotel, nobody knows where you are. It's almost as though you can reinvent yourself because you are not identified by all these data traces that you have on yourself. Of course, the moment you paid with a credit card, somebody, the great computer in the sky, would know where you are.
Of course. But don't forget that you carry a cell phone with Google Maps on it. So they already know where you are.
If you've
But-
actually seen how much information comes off your phone, if you haven't, you'd be shocked.
Yeah.
Well, I know. I'm just raising this question because I think that mostly the public does not know how surveilled it is, and that this surveillance is going to increase dramatically
Oh, yeah.
going
It
forward.
will.
Yeah,
No
so I think
doubt. Let me take a pause here. Give me a moment. I gotta remind our audience of our up and coming Digital 360 Summit, where Ubicquia is going to be participating and speaking, and so will you two gentlemen. It's August 31st to September 2nd, and we have a fantastic lineup of great companies speaking. Here, the logo of the Ubicquia guys, but you can see all the other logos from the White House Chronicle to the University of Texas logo to all of the others. So looking forward to that. And I want to thank Texas State University for sponsoring the Digital Roundtable every week. So let me go back and perhaps talk a little bit about smart cities. So there's a lot going on, and obviously, Troy, you guys are in building a platform, delivering streetlights and sensors, and also working with the electric grid and so on. But there seems to be almost an infinite amount of opportunities in cities as they're trying to automate all their departments, municipal courts, payments, parks and recreation, public safety, fire, everything they do, all the infrastructure they own on electric, water, gas, telecom, cable, poles, right-of-ways, bridges, tunnels. I mean, it seems like, as you guys look at what you're doing in your product line, which is not an infinite amount of products, how do you go about choosing what is the next thing? What is the next sensor? How does that happen at Ubicquia?
So obviously everything is business case driven, right? Customers that have a need come first. We have a utility customer we work with very closely. It's one of our investors. And, when like our distribution transformer monitor, we work with them. They asked for it, some key particulars to be in there. And we jointly built a product with them, and it's going out to the global market now. So I think everything really just comes down to the business case. But I think by putting out our infrastructure today, we really are building the foundation for partnering with third-party sensors, and how that happens, whether it's through software integrations into our existing platforms, or if it's just through a physical integration via a connected wire or Wi-Fi. So I think that's really going to be where you see it kind of go to the next step, is a bit more of an ecosystem building upon what we've already done. And then we'll be building, key components to that to expand system where we see the business fit.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. Let's go back to one of Llewelyn's great questions. There is a human nature that we try to build into the census. That is, and as generations upon generations come to the forefront, as you will. In other words, as new generation occupy different kinds of spaces. I wonder if there's a different kind of way that we'll even talk about humanity. Is there a different kind of way that we'll talk about connectivity? So when I say to my students, how many friends do you have at the University of Texas? They'll say, I have 450 connection on my Instagram. What does that mean? How many intimate friends do you have? Well, I have friends on Instagram. I have friends on Facebook. I want as we move through the generations, Troy, how do you think about how your technology, I'll do my best, Llewelyn, here again, but it would actually affect how people relate to each other? Because it is the connectivity of people that you're connecting also. Have you thought about what would Hume look like if he were alive today and to write his letters? What would Rousseau say about today? What would the Wealth of Nations say about the wealth? How do you think about that going forward with your technology?
Oof, that's a big question. From the core aspect of our technology, I don't want to say it's more of the same, but it's more connectivity to enable people to be less intimate in reality, right? I think that people are, COVID's making it go even further apart than what it has been. So, I think that we really need to start finding ways that people can truly connect in person, right? Your example at UT, my friends, when I was growing up, my friends were the kids I could ride, my bike to, that was probably within a mile of distance.
Mhm.
And, and you got together all the time. I guess I grew up on the fledgling side of this stuff, being a early 70s kid. But yeah, I think it's, I'm not sure what sensors or things that are going to be out there that get kids engaged more together. Maybe it's the next sensor-based Pokemon that gets kids out in the street and they're going to look for something and it becomes a game,
Right.
But I think that there has to be something within there that next young innovator is going to bring to the market that says, look, this is how we leverage what's out here in the infrastructure, and this is how we start to interact with people on a different level.
I see a clear connection between having all this infrastructure like yours deployed in my city, and then as I working for the city, needing to repair equipment, this whole notion of augmented reality, virtual reality, headsets, and being able to kind of manage that infrastructure and the fixing of it in a different way. And yeah, you guys, anybody asking for anything like that yet?
I haven't seen that yet. But I mean, all the big operators are talking about how AR, VR is going to change how we live, work, and play. So I think that, we become just a part of that solution as it rolls out into the market.
Yeah.
So I think one thing, with a lot of our streetlight based stuff, I mean, streetlights have a key element. They're close to the street, right? So if we start to look at, take automotive industry, the V2X that's happening and starting to progress through, we like to say we're in the pole position to help enable V2X communications. And, we're really sitting in that place, on that streetlight. And, I think partnerships with Qualcomm that we have today will help drive that to fruition.
Yeah.
But Troy, I want you to think about this. You got to think about the time when cars are flying around like bumblebees. So what we're doing in Austin now is we're doing Uber, and they're getting the flight paths for Uber. And so maybe our concept of what a street is might change in the next 10 to 20 years. So as evolution evolves, we must always keep in mind that the lamppost is very, very important. But if cars are flying around like bumblebees, something would take its place, So I think that I'm always thinking business models.
Right.
Right.
The vertical highway.
Yeah.
Vertical highway.
Llewelyn, what do you think?
Well, I was just sitting here contemplating Johnny's extreme eloquence. Do I actually have to deal with the issues before us? I think we don't know what the future is going to look like at all. And I wonder, I like Johnny's question because I wonder how much leapfrogging there will be as this has leapfrogged the copper wire telephone, sometimes very dramatically, as in Africa, for example. And I also wonder what we will do about 3 levels of transportation. I'm not inclined to dismiss Elon Musk's boring machine, the idea that we can tunnel more cheaply, because I think it's going to be necessary. I think we'll have 3 modes of transportation: surface, subsurface, and flight. I think that really efficient smart cities will have to have good public transportation. Now, it's very difficult to do. I've done a bit of research on smart cities, and most of the lists come up with, London, New York, Singapore. They're all cities that have fairly good public transportation. They're putting that in as a value, which would exclude a lot of Texas cities where public transport, or for that matter, a lot of Florida cities. But I think public transportation is going to come into its own in a smart city, and I'm not sure what it will be. I think it will not be what we have seen. We may have automated buses. I don't think we're going to have automated cars, because I think people like their own car, but an automated bus would be a very useful thing. And you could also do them electrically, and you could have them spinning around quite effectively without drivers. But these things, it's not just the interconnectivity of lights and police systems, etc., but transportation is one of the big bugaboos that all cities face. And one of the things that happened with COVID is people found out, hello, world, I don't have to spend 4 hours commuting a day. I have a friend who lives in Philadelphia and works in New York. That's hell. I mean, there are people who live way out in Connecticut and work in New York, and people who live in Front Royal and work in Washington. That's a very poor use of a human life, sitting in an automobile. And better transportation, and transportation that enables people to do something other than sit there.
However, think about this, Llewelyn, to build on what you're saying. I see transportation and mobility as an application that rides on top of the infrastructure. And one of the things that I like about the Ubicquia solution is that it's building not knowingly, or maybe knowingly, right? I'm putting streetlights that are connected, but by doing that, I'm building a roadway of connectivity. I can talk to my customers via Wi-Fi. I'm leveraging 4G and 5G. And just like you and I didn't know that Facebook or Twitter could happen, God knows what's going to ride on top of that. Back to John's applications, driving. So I'm curious, Troy, when you look at the utilities and you look at your TDM product and leveraging the small cells, what is it that they like? What do they see? Where is that heading? Do you see millions of these things everywhere? Do you see real-time controls of the grid? Is that what they want? What do they want?
So really, I think there's 2 areas. There's their own use. So there's their own use for managing the grid. And that can really be 2 sets. That can be building their own private LTE, 4G, 5G networks that they run versus running on a carrier's network. So they get the security, privacy that they want of their own spectrum, leveraging something like Anterix. But then there's also the end devices that go on that for a different part of the business, which is things like, the light control, the transformer monitoring systems, everything that's really looking at something on the grid. So the fact that we have power metering in everything we do, these become intelligent points within the grid that we can provide and feed data into an analytic tool that determines what's really happening within the grid. So I think that's kind of the two from a utility perspective. But then maybe the third one that's not in their, I don't want to say it's not in their core business, because it is, they own the infrastructure. But we're hearing from a lot of the big IOUs that they want to get in the small cell space with the carriers, meaning they have the lights, they have the infrastructure. A lot of big IOUs have fiber infrastructure. So really what we like to call it is a small cell as a service offering, where the carrier either brings or does not bring the small cell, but the utility could essentially either procure the small cell and or do all the rest of the normal functions, which are the real estate, the power, physical installation, the maintenance. Because as I like to say, the utility, they have the people and they have the trucks. So they're already out in the field. And so this is a new business model that a lot of the IOUs that we're talking with are looking at, is how they start to maybe create a new line of revenue, focusing specifically on enabling the small cell industry to go quicker and cheaper than it does today. As you heard, everyone has these very large numbers that have been thrown around for small cells. They haven't come to reality, not because the technology is not there, it's because they're darn expensive to deploy. And what we're trying to focus on is making it lower cost to deploy, so that hockey stick of small cells can truly happen.
Yeah.
And Troy, let me just give you some more professor advice here, in terms of the customer. Everybody knows in that great case when they asked Henry Ford, what do your customers want? And he said, they want a faster horse. And the great McKinsey firm missed cell phone commercialization by a factor of billions. So what I'm excited about your company is the business models that you're creating. We haven't even seen yet. There's nobody on the board of Ford Motor Company when he said, my customer wants a faster horse, who understood what Ford was talking about. He had no idea, as Llewelyn just said, that the cell phone would completely replace how we communicate now in the landline. What's exciting about moving technology, what's exciting is, as I said earlier, the business models and the customers will be brought to the table. Andre Carvallo is bringing cities to the table. I mean, we're doing smart cities in small towns because they have no understanding of what a business case would look like. So be very, very mindful that you are so far ahead, right, of the average consumer and the average business person. And as Llewelyn would say, we like to look at the past, but we do the same thing in the past much faster and much more. I'm gonna use a word that he hates, efficient. He hates the word efficient, right?
I just like the idea of efficiency because it's a false goal. It works sometimes. You don't want an efficient opera. You just don't. Right. The efficiency is fine if you're delivering something, but it has limits. There is that human dimension, and we wanted some things. They sped up, the Mistral was a train that ran from Marseille to Paris. It was a wonderful institution. You could get your hair cut on it, you could buy, that had shops on it, several restaurants, because weight is not a great penalty with trains. And they replaced it with a much more efficient, much faster très grande vitesse, the TGV. But it's no fun anymore.
Yeah, but that
lost some.
Yeah, let's lose a quick sports analogy.
And I think that you can lose things. I mean, there are lots of things in life that we have because we like them. A great many things in architecture because we like them. It's not all Bauhaus and efficiency. It's because we like crenulated walls or something
but the pieces,
like that.
Right, the pieces are there, and it's a surprise. Take my alma mater in 1919, Troy Moore, LSU boy. And well, I had them over here to play Texas, and they threw the ball more in the first quarter than they did the whole last 10 years. I said, my God, what has happened? And then they go on to just do stuff that was just unbelievable. Nobody could have predicted that. Nobody could have predicted. It's the same way in business, right? And by the way, Troy, we're going to roll into Alabama, the purple and gold, and slap you this year. But my point is that, you know, what's interesting about your company, and keep this in mind, think about the business models that's not there yet. And you have to pay attention to the science, get a board of directors that talks about the science and business models, rather than one that talks about the management and accounting and the finance.
Yeah.
The future.
Let me share something with you all and get a reaction from. So we had the pleasure of learning last night that Tesla Motor Company has applied with the Public Utility Commission of Texas to become a retail energy provider. They want to sell electrons like any other retail energy provider in Texas, in addition to selling their solar rooftops, their Powerwall batteries, and their electric vehicles. Thoughts?
I think the electrons, somebody's got to manufacture them. You can't just sell it. You've got to have some generating source. But I think every time Elon Musk does something, I think you should take notice, because he is the Edison of the moment. Extraordinary things happen. He is responsible for the solar power wave, for the electric car wave, for the PayPal. I mean, the man has enormous impact in what he does. I find him very interesting because he's not per se an interesting man. I don't think you would love having dinner with him. But his impact on society has been huge and continue. And of course, the recoverable rocket. I mean, this is big stuff.
Well, Llewelyn,
He thinks he can sell electricity. I think you should take a lot of notice, and some of those stodgy utility companies should take even more notice.
Well, Llewelyn, I make this argument. He's not in the car industry. He's in the power industry. He will purchase the electricity wholesale and sell it to us retail. I maintain that the Ford that's coming out, the E-Ford, they are all getting into the power business. I do not see Tesla as an automobile product. I see it as being in the energy space. And the wheels and driving is just an excuse to be in the energy space.
I agree, but it doesn't really matter. The impact is huge, and it behooves us, unless we're absolutely stupid, to see what is happening with him. He's going to change it. When we deregulated electricity in the 1990s, we thought people would be competing and buying electricity. It didn't really happen. It was an idea driven by that great, Johnny, that great Texas company, Enron. It was an idea that, actually, I knew Enron very well.
The competition happens in Texas every day, Llewelyn.
Yeah, but anyway, I think it's very interesting. I think that we're going to see a change in the utility space, and the utilities assume that life will go on as it always has. New demands for electricity, they will provide it. I'm not sure of that at all.
But Troy, what do you think of the prospects of partnering with somebody like Tesla to revolutionize cities and sell electricity?
Hey, you know, I think personally, I like to say if Elon wants to give me a solar roof, I'll gladly let him have all the extra power for free, so I can get rid of my bill. You know, I've been looking at solar forever, and I want to put it on my home, and we don't have net metering where I live, and you know, it's a 30-year payback period, so this doesn't make right business sense. But John, I want to leave you with one thing as we're closing down here a bit. You know, I'm glad you brought up Henry Ford. I tend to like to think of us as a Henry Ford, right? Henry Ford he didn't change anything about the automobile. He changed how you built it. We're not changing anything about small cells, about Wi-Fi. They're all standard-based solutions. We're changing how you deploy them and making it cost effective. And we're doing it all through industrial design.
Absolutely.
You're a very interesting man, Troy. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Nice meeting you all.
Troy, I
Troy,
need to
thank
ask-
you for being with us today. It's been very interesting. Love the graphic that you allowed us to share. Let me show it one more time for the audience to remember. Quite a unique set of products there, all integrated with a beautiful software platform. And we're looking forward to have you guys at the Digital 360 Summit. And hopefully we will come and visit you at Orange Beach, one of my favorite places of all time.
It is a great city.
And when you're in Wisconsin again, you know, he actually grew up in Wisconsin and roots for the Badgers of all things, Johnny.
Well, I sent my Tigers up there about 3 years ago and they spanked my Tigers. So I don't think I can say it. Congratulations.
I think the number you're looking for, John, is your rusher got 9 yards.
Yes, I think that's what we're looking for. And we didn't, that's why we fired the coach, because of the Wisconsin game.
But you did hire a
Go, go,
Wisconsin.
guys.
That's right.
Bye-bye.
Oh, remember, I went to Northwestern also. So another first down for the Wildcats.
There you go.
So be careful with that purple up there.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having us.
Okay.
Thank you, Troy, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.